Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa. And I'm Shawn Yao.
The Duterte father and daughter are the big stories tonight. First, former President Digong is seeking temporary release from ICC detention to a country that has shown willingness to take him in. Mr. Duterte says he is no longer a flight risk nor a threat to his alleged victims.
And then there's Vice President Sara Duterte, whose impeachment case is in limbo amid the standoff in Congress. Now, Congressmen want some of her allies who happen to be senator judges out of the VP's trial altogether.
And the officer who arrested former President Duterte has a new policy. Now, PNP Chief Nicolas Torre III says policemen stand to lose their guns and even their jobs if they cannot shoot properly.
President Duterte's track record of saying something and doing another. How can the court trust him?
Ay siguro tawasin mo yung mga yan ay supporter pa rin ng mga Duterte.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte, through his lawyers, has filed a formal petition for interim release. Duterte's lawyer, Nicholas Kaufman, informed the International Criminal Court that a third country has agreed to receive Duterte onto its territory. The name of the said country is still being withheld. Kaufman said the petition is based on humanitarian considerations for Duterte given his advanced age. Digong turned 80 this year. They also gave submissions assuring the court that Duterte is not a flight risk, that the former president will not imperil proceedings if released, and that he will not commit the same crimes he is charged with. The Duterte camp also claimed in their request that there have been discussions about the interim release between the prosecution and the defense. ICC Assistant to Counsel Cristina Conti, however, expressed concern over the alleged discussion. In a statement, Conti expressed dismay over reports that the ICC prosecutor would not oppose Duterte's request for interim release. Conti added that victims of Duterte's drug war are against any special treatment for the former president. Conti hopes the ICC would give victims an opportunity to weigh in on the matter. Another lawyer to the alleged victims, attorney Nery Colmenares, doubts that Duterte will abide by the conditions for his provisional release.
President Duterte's track record for so many years of saying something and doing another. How can the court trust him for committing to follow what he promises when he has a track record of not following what he promised? So I think the courts will not listen to this kind of commitment on his part.
What's the chance of former President Duterte's release bid being granted? Tonight, we discuss this with ICC-accredited lawyer, attorney Joel Butuyan. Good evening, attorney, and welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Tess, and thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, will this be, the judges still have to agree to this, correct?
Correct. And in fact, the prosecutor and the victims' counsel will have to submit their views and observations on the application that was filed by the defense counsel.
Mm-hmm. But if it is correct that the prosecutor has agreed to this arrangement, will the lawyers of the victims also be able to weigh in?
Yes, the victims will have to weigh in. And even the prosecutor, in fact, because we've only heard the version of the defense counsel that the prosecution has already agreed, no? But if you're going to analyze the wordings of their application, the proper interpretation is that the prosecutor will agree to an interim release subject to conditionalities. And those conditionalities have not been revealed because they are treated as confidential in the application.
Mm-hmm. You will oppose this? Can we assume that?
We will vehemently oppose this. We're going to submit the views and observations of the victims, although we're going to do it through the Office of the Public Counsel for Victims, the OPCV. That's like the POW of the ICC, because at this point, the ICC has not appointed a permanent victims counsel.
Attorney Butuyan, I heard an interview given by ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti, earlier this morning. She says that medyo tatlo yung main players when it comes to the ICC as a court. You have the defense, of course, the prosecutors, and the victims who are given, quite a big voice. Can we say that more or less the voice of the victims is actually just as weighty as the voice of the defense and the voice of the prosecution?
The main parties in an ICC trial are actually only the defense and the prosecutor. The victims are considered as participants, no? But their views carry weight, especially on matters like this, like interim relief, no? Interim release, because there are factual issues that that should be taken from the victims themselves, because with the prosecution and the defense, you're dealing here with foreign counsels, no? So you have to get the views and the observations of the victims, because they are the ones who will feel threatened, who will feel the intimidation once Mr. Duterte is given interim release.
Attorney, do you have any idea on the supposed host country? Right now, it's still undisclosed, but do you have any idea who it could possibly be?
It's not identified, although if you're going to base it on past cases, it was Belgium that agreed to be a host country in the case of an African accused, no? And it's really practical for Belgium to act as host country because it's adjacent to the Netherlands. So if Mr. Duterte is going to be required to attend the hearings, it's going to be just less than an hour travel between Brussels and The Hague.
Is there a precedent, or are there precedents on the release of an accused on humanitarian grounds? What are the conditions? What falls under humanitarian grounds?
Well, actually, even the defense acknowledge and admit that humanitarian grounds are not actually one of the specific grounds that are mentioned in the Rome Statute, and that would trigger interim release. No, there would be conditionalities that are usually imposed by the ICC on the granting of interim release. This would include the restriction to travel outside of the jurisdiction of the host country, the prohibition against communicating with victims and witnesses, and the prohibition against the use of gadgets. That's one. In fact, in the application of the defense, they have actually proposed, they have already undertaken that Mr. Duterte is not going to be using any internet or any electronic gadget. And he is also undertaking that he's not going to communicate outside of with any person outside of his family. He's also undertaken not to attend public engagements, no, and to perform official duties.
Okay.
So what are the conditionalities that are being offered by Mr. Duterte in order for him to be given interim release?
These conditionalities to you are not enough to shield the victims from possible harassment or assuage their fear of a retaliation.
Yes. It's not enough, says. Even when Mr. Duterte was arrested, so many victims, so many witnesses refused actually to still come out and participate and cooperate with the ICC because there was still fear, no? There was still paralyzing fear in them. Now, if you're going to release Mr. Duterte, more so that they're not going to be participating in the ICC processes. No? We have here a person who does not recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. From the very beginning, he withdrew our country's membership in the ICC. He does not recognize and he violates international law, even our constitution. No? So whatever agreement he's going to sign into, it's going to be a piece of paper, and he's not going to, at the first opportunity, he's going to violate it.
Attorney Batuyan, the attorneys of former President Duterte pointed out that he is no longer in a position to be able to commit these crimes again because hindi na siya president, he's not in the position of authority. Is that not enough? Are the victims not buying that line from the Duterte defense?
We're not buying that line, just last November, he appeared in the Quadcom hearings in the lower house in Congress. And he said that if he's going to be elected as mayor, he's going to double the casualties, in a renewed drug war. So this person, and besides his followers, we see what they've been doing. They engage in rallies almost every day in The Hague. And their battle cry is to bring back Mr. Duterte to the Philippines, even Mr. Duterte's family. That's the objective. They filed a case in the Supreme Court, and in their rallies that they go to and attend, that's the battle cry is to bring back Mr. Duterte.
So do you think the fact that he actually ran for mayor and won could actually be detrimental to this bid for interim release?
It is, it is. It gives him power again, and with the many supporters that he has, even by just his presence or any statement that he makes, any veiled statement that he makes, would be taken seriously by this as marching orders by these followers of his.
How soon do we expect the prosecutor to respond?
The ICC pretrial chamber is going to give the prosecutor and the victims' counsel time to respond. Well, normally it would be 10 days, sometimes it's 15 days for these parties to respond before the pretrial chamber would decide on this issue.
We were actually expecting that they would apply for an interim release, like the lawyers of the former president, that is, right?
Yes. A few weeks after Mr. Kaufman was appointed, he actually already said that he plans to file an application for interim release for Mr. Duterte. So we were expecting this, actually.
Yeah, but apparently there were negotiations. They talked to a third country. To the prosecutor also. What could have happened? I mean, is this allowed as well, that talks between the prosecutor and the defense happen outside of court?
To be objective about it, it's really allowed, no? It's there are talks, there are inter partes talks that happen between the prosecution and defense. And especially if the issue is treated as confidential, yes, it happens.
Attorney, well, if we're talking about precedents, there have been previous cases already of individuals being granted interim release. Pero tama po ba na their cases weren't as grave as the one that Mr. Duterte is facing, which is crimes against humanity? So, ibig sabihin, yung mga nag-grant na dati ng interim release, mas mababa lang naman kasi yung kaso nila, like obstruction of justice. Kaya nag-grant
tampering, mga ganon.
Yes.
Yeah.
True. That's true, no? And in fact, in one case where interim release was granted, it resulted in the disappearance and the killings of witnesses, no? This is in the case of Mr. Bemba of Kenya. So this should be at the back of the minds of the judges if and when they consider this application for interim release by Mr. Duterte.
And how many judges will be deciding whether or not to grant this interim release? Is it also the 3 judges, or is it going to be more than that?
The 3 judges are going to decide. They are the judges of the pretrial chamber 1, which is assigned to hear the pretrial stage of the Duterte case.
And is this done using paper submissions only, or will you get to go to the ICC and kind of debate this on the floor?
Yeah, it's usually paper submissions. It's very rare when the pretrial chamber would call for a hearing on this issue.
And attorney, well, you did mention that the voices of the victims are just as important as the prosecution, the defense. What's the latest now on the victims? Are more people stepping forward as you conduct your investigation further, leading up to the September trial, facing of charges?
Yes, actually, we're doing workshops for the victims so that they can file their application forms to the ICC, because they have to file application forms in order for them to be recognized as victim participants, no, in the trial and later on in the reparation stage.
Can you share with us their reaction to this development?
A lot of them are shocked. No, to the victims that I have talked to so far, a lot of them are shocked, and they are in disbelief that this is happening, especially when news is coming out that the prosecutor agreed, no, which is actually misleading, because it will agree only subject to conditions, no. But the message is that the message they're getting is that the prosecutors agreed, no, which is really, really disappointing for them.
So should they have used maybe amenable, right? But it also, as Ces was pointing out earlier, it shows that meron talagang pag-uusap between the prosecution and defense. Is it okay that the defense actually said, are these conversations supposed to be, like you said, confidential? Tapos sinabi nila sa release nila na, oh, nakausap na namin yung prosecution and they're open to it.
Yes. It sends a chilling message, no?
Parang medyo weird, di ba?
That's true, no? That's true. Dahil yung framing niya ng kanyang presentation on the agreement of the prosecution is sobrang talagang parang under the table na nangyari, no? Kumbaga.
Yes, but we will only hear from the prosecutor in his response to the court.
Yes. Yes, we will hear from the prosecutor when they make the response.
And this is as usual. I mean, we've seen how the court works. Medyo mabilis. Usually 10 days to 2 weeks, more or less, may reply na. So can we count on that kind of same timeline-ish?
I think so, yes. Oo, mabilis yung court, no? I think there's really the intention to resolve the preliminary issues before September 23. So I expect that this issue on interim release and the jurisdictional issue will be resolved before the September 23 confirmation of charges.
Attorney Butuyan, what's in it for the host country? Why would the host country, be willing to somebody accused of, horrible crime?
Kasama kasi doon sa mga obligations ng mga state parties, no? That if there are going to be requests and there is going to be, if assuming na mayroong agreement between the prosecutor and the defense, there are countries that seriously consider their obligations under the ICC to facilitate the trial. So, ganun yung nangyayari. Although, bihira yung mga countries na ganito, no? Na kagaya ng Belgium, that agrees to really, especially, siguro, nakikita naman siguro nila kung gaano gulo yung nangyayari dun sa mga supporters ni Mr. Duterte. They take over the parks, no?
Yeah.
So,
But can they say no, Attorney Butuyan? Do they have the chance to change their mind or decline if they are signatory countries of the Rome Statute?
yes, they can say no, actually. And in fact, when the ICC judges will impose conditions, they still have the right to say no, na hindi namin po pwedeng gawin yung obligasyon na yan o hindi namin kaya yung obligasyon na yan. They can still say that.
All right. Well, abangan ang susunod na kabanata. This is another Duterte in the news. Thank you so much for your time, Attorney Joel Butuyan. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you.
Now, in related news, Senator Robin Padilla is floating the idea of a Sara Duterte-Amy Marcos tandem in 2028. Padilla did not even try to be subtle about it. He even offered to stand as a frontliner in the campaign for the vice president and senator on Thursday. And here's the #1 senator in the 2022 elections during the Philippine Independence Day celebrations in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which he, Marcos, and Duterte attended.
Gusto ko muna pong magbigay pugay, unang-una sa susunod na Pangulo ng Pilipinas, Inday Sara Duterte. Ito po ay aking sinasaluduhan din. Ito pong pangalawang masasabi kong pangalawang pinuno namin. Gusto ko pong magpugay kay Amy Marcos, Senator Amy Marcos. Si Robin Padilla hindi politiko. Si Robin Padilla sa 2028 campaign manager ako ni Inday Sara Duterte at ni Amy Marcos. At siyempre ang mga senador nila, Doc Mata, Jimmy Bondok, Atty. Hillo, at kung sino pa ang pipiliin nila.
But for another staunch Duterte ally, former presidential legal counsel Sal Panelo, a better tandem for 2028 would be Sara and Robin. Panelo said he has lost all trust in the presidential sister after what President Bongbong Marcos did to the Dutertes. This year, Sara was impeached by the House of Representatives for high crimes, while Digong was arrested by the ICC for crimes against humanity.
Mas maganda siguro, Sara-Robin Padilla. Yung Amy, wala eh. Balat kayo, kaya hindi ako nagtitiwala doon. Maraming hindi nagtitiwala doon. Balat kayo kasi masyado yun.
Meanwhile, senator judges fraternizing with the subject of the impeachment has several people up in arms. They ask, whatever happened to delicadeza with what's perceived as some legislators' blatant disregard of standards of conduct? Marian Enriquez has the story.
Kahit siguro tawasin mo yung mga yan, ay supporter pa rin ng mga Duterte. Kaya dapat ay mag-inhibit sila, no, as senator judge.
Congresswoman Franz Castro can't hide her dismay upon seeing Senator Judges Robin Padilla and Amy Marcos with Vice President Sara Duterte, who was impeached by the House of Representatives back in February. In Malaysia, Duterte even jokingly said that she's holding the presidential sister hostage until her father Digong is brought home to the Philippines from ICC detention. Castro's party mate, incoming Congressman Antonio Tino, is as horrified by the behavior of Marcos and Padilla and other senators known to be allies of the Dutertes.
Pinapakita, pinangangalandakan sa publiko na wala silang pakialam sa impartiality. Wala tayong ilusyon na mag-i-inhibit ang dalawang yan o yung mga senators na openly supportive kay Vice President Sara Duterte.
Even Malacanang has something to say on the alleged bias being shown by the two senators who tagged along the VP's Kuala Lumpur trip.
Dapat hindi bias. Sa ngayon po, harap-harapang ipinapakita ang biases. Sana po igalang nila ang taong bayan at magpakita naman ng konting kahihiyan.
Because of these so-called unprecedented actions, House prosecutors are reportedly considering the filing of a motion that will call for senator judges deemed partial to VP Sara to inhibit from the impeachment trial. They are also planning to discuss legal remedies they might pursue before or after the 20th Congress convenes. Congressman Arnan Panaligan, one of the House prosecutors, admits, though, this might be difficult to prove. That's because the Senate has not conducted any trial yet, although the chamber has already convened as an impeachment court. For now, the lower chamber's motion for clarification stands, deferring acceptance of the remanded articles of impeachment from the Senate. Meanwhile, other lawmakers believe the upcoming Congress no longer has to issue certification if Duterte's trial will be carried over. The Senate impeachment court has included this provision when they returned Sara's articles of impeachment to the House.
The articles of impeachment itself is already the certification that they need. And that based on the jurisprudence and actual practice that we have, the articles of impeachment enjoy presumption of regularity unless there is evidence that should have been presented not by the judges themselves but presented by the defense lawyers. So we're actually asking kaninong senador ba sila? Senador ng mga Duterte? sunador ng bawat Pilipino.
For its part, the Vice President's defense team is already talking about how to comply with the writs of summons issued to their client by the Senate. For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, a returning senator is calling out the upper chamber's move to return Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment complaints to the House of Representatives. We have the details when the big story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back to the big story. For Senator-elect Tito Soto, the Senate's decision to remand the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte to the House of Representatives is flawed. Soto, who was a former Senate president, says this cannot be done on a mere motion raised by a senator judge. He emphasized that only defense or prosecution counsels can file such motions.
Ang motion ng mga judges is for issues lang for clarification, ganun lang. Hindi come up with a resolution na without hearing the trial or inquiry, yet without listening to the defense or listening to the prosecution first. That is not a practice as an impeachment judge. Hindi ginagawa yun.
Soto said it was the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago who said senator judges are not allowed to make motions and may only ask for clarifications during an impeachment trial. He also urged senators to study the actions of the senator judges during previous impeachment trials first before making any statements or motions. This includes knowing why senator judges are required to wear their traditional impeachment robe, considered a symbol of authority and impartiality. Soto also rejected Senate President Francis Escudero's stand that the rules do not prohibit the remanding of the case back to the House of Representatives. Soto argued that even if the said act is not in the rules, it is not allowed. Impeachment Court spokesperson Attorney Reginald Tongol, however, said that though unique, remanding the articles is not unconstitutional.
One of the powers, inherent powers of any court is to look into the face of the document, the complaint itself, and see if there are defects in that document. At dito ni-raise ng isang senator judge na merong depekto, maaaring merong depekto, at sabi ng korte, o tingnan natin, hingin natin sa kanila para makomply nila kung ano man yung sinasabi mong depekto at kung makocomply ba yun ng House.
And to weigh in on the latest developments on VP Sara's impeachment complaint, we're joined by ACT Teachers Party List Representative-elect Antonio Tino. Good evening to you and welcome to the big story.
Hi, good evening, Ces, Shawn, and Pauline. Good evening to the viewers.
We listened to you earlier saying that the action of some of the senator judges were immoral and bound to lead to a recusal. But is there any process where you can get a senator judge not to render a judgment? Or is it just, it is a personal decision left to them?
Yes, unfortunately, recusing oneself or inhibiting is a purely voluntary act, apparently, on the part of the senator judges. So, in the end, it's really the personal decision of the senators whether or not they will inhibit themselves. So, even though we have such blatant displays of partiality, hindi naman po tinatago nung Duterte block ng mga senators, and by that we mean Senator Bato, Bongo, Senator Amy, and Senator Robin at the least, no, yung minimum, hindi nila tinatago yung pagiging partisan nila from the start.
They actually wear it with pride.
Yes, in fact, pinangangalandakan po talaga at hindi nga ang pinakalayunin pa nga talaga nila ay pigilan na ang impeachment. So the very first thing, for example, that Senator Bato did was to move for the dismissal of the whole proceeding. No, so without even actually officially receiving the articles of impeachment. So malinaw po na partial sila, pinagmamalaki nila na partial sila, nandun sila para hadlangan, pigilan, o kung hindi, ultimately ay i-acquit si VP Sara Duterte kahit wala pang actual na trial at hindi pa nakikita yung ebidensya.
Makukuha ba yun sa public pressure? Pagtutuligsa ng publiko?
Well, in the end, that's what's needed, but that will only work if our politicians have a sense of, tawag nga dyan, delicadeza or some sort of sense of shame. Unfortunately, let's be real, it's not going to happen in the case of these senators.
So what's the plan of ACT Teachers Party List as well as your coalition? Alam namin na tumindig kayo earlier this week, pero mukhang July na ulit aandar, Congressman-elect. So in the meantime, it's a lot of weeks. What's the plan? May plano po ba kayo?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, it has to be made clear to the public that the impeachment trial is not dismissed, it's not dead. It's merely on hiatus. So that is the effect of what the Senate did when it remanded the articles. And more specifically, when the Senate Impeachment Court asked the House of Representatives of the 20th Congress, so naka-specify dun that the Senate impeachment, as an impeachment court, wants a resolution approved by the House of Representatives of the 20th Congress, assuring them that they want that the House will pursue the impeachment proceedings of the impeachment trial. So talagang naka-break or naka-hiatus yung impeachment trial. Pero nandyan pa rin at dapat matuloy pa rin. So actually, during this break, sa panahong ito, very critical dahil dito maaring mangyari ang maraming kababalaghan. We can already anticipate that there will be a lot of behind-the-scenes horse trading, maneuvering by the different interested parties here, mainly the administration, the forces of the administration, and the Duterte group, and deals will probably be made, and so on. The leadership in the House and the Senate will have a bearing as well on this.
What is your take on the House leadership? Do you think that Speaker Romualdez will still continue his hold because on the position? Because that's one thing that they seem to be implying. Baka ayaw na nila. Baka naman merong magkuku dyan, may ibang numero, and render, and indicate that they're no longer interested in pursuing the impeachment case.
Well, the way the Senate impeachment court posed the question to the House seems to imply that, no? That, well,
do they know something you don't or we don't?
Parang may nagsasabi kasi exit, parang it's a exit door Nagbukas sila ng isa pang pinto.
And then of course there's you see online a demonization of Speaker Romualdez, and which is not really the issue. It's for another forum. And so you see some kind of tack that's being taken.
Well, the truth is that apart from the very open rivalry or conflict between the Marcos and Duterte blocs or groups, there's also a rivalry within the Marcos, the ruling coalition itself. So that includes the matter or the question of who leads the House. So at the moment, it seems that Speaker Romualdez still has the numbers based on the press releases and the announcements we get from the House.
Press
But,
releases.
yeah, but anything can happen between now and SONA, the opening of the
Sinusuyo na po ba
20th
kayo?
Congress.
Congressman-elect, sinusuyo na po ba kayo ng House leadership? Because we know that 20th Congress doesn't exist yet, but they've already reached out to Attorney Laila de Lima, Attorney Chel Diokno, to join the prosecution team. So it got me thinking, baka may pag-uusap na, pagsusuyo,
Well, nag-uusap-usap na at syempre, naririnig natin, kasama rin tayo sa ilan sa mga nag-uusap, inaalam din natin ang kalagayan. For our part, yung Makabayan representatives, mainly ang position natin is we will stay with the minority, parang yung kalagayan in the previous Congress. No? So, pero malinaw na nga na naggagalawan na hindi pa nga tapos yung 19th Congress. As we know, may mga announcements na about support for Speaker Romualdez, and supposedly there's a challenge coming from, well, pinangalanan naman si Representative Toby Tiangco daw. Who knows? So anything can happen between now and the opening of the 20th Congress, which is during the SONA, so that's near the end of July. Kaya ang importante para sa publiko na interesado at gusto talaga, no, na magtuloy-tuloy ang trial at mapanagot si VP Sara, at least mapaliwanag, no, makakuha tayo ng malinaw na paliwanag kung saan ba ano ba nangyari doon sa confidential funds. Dahil maraming mga kababayan natin hindi satisfied na binigay daw yun kay Mary Grace Piatos. No, so importante na bantayan natin, subaybayan natin ng maigi yung mangyayari between now and the opening of Congress, at tiyakin na malakas pa rin ang public pressure para ituloy ito.
Sir, just one quick and final question for me, and if we can also get a quick answer from you. With all the events that unfolded this past week, some people couldn't help but think na mayroong conspiracy na nangyayari behind the scenes, that some of our politicians, the senators, congressmen are just following a script to protect their political ties and ambitions. What do you think of that, sir?
Well, of course, yun talaga ang nangyayari. No, the senators in particular are very keen not to show their hand at this point, no? Kasi para sa kanila, yun ang importante to maintain their leverage. So, apart from yung grupo ng mga Duterte na malinaw kung saan na sila, tapos I suppose yung mga nasa minority na malinaw naman na para sa pagpapatuloy ng impeachment, the others would like to preserve their strategic ambiguity, kumbaga. Kaya what we get is this, no, mga hindi malinaw o pinalalabo ang usapin sa halip na gawin nila yung tungkulin nila, which is to proceed with the trial forthwith.
All right, we thank you so much for your time. ACT Teachers Representative-elect Antonio Tino.
Thank you.
And moving on, PNP Chief General Nicolas Torre III said he is going to double down on policemen's firearms proficiency next month. Torre announced this as he sampled his target shooting skills during the PNP Press Corps Shoot Fest in Quezon City. He warned that he will fire any policeman who fails to hit targets.
Hindi acceptable na ang pulis ay hindi marunong gumamit ng baril. Tanggalin natin ang baril nila. Palitan natin ng bolo. Sayang ang bala, ang mahal-mahal niya. Tapos imimiss mo lang.
The PNP actually has regular marksmanship proficiency tests, but according to Torre, it has not been taken seriously. In light of this, Torre says he will be strict from patrolman to general. The country's top cop says even he won't be exempted.
Kung bumagsak ako, di magpapa-try ako, magre-retire ako. So, ganun ang gagawin natin. Pag tinest sila at bagsak sila sa marksmanship, abay, tatanggalin ko ang mga commanders na hindi makakapasa sa ating proficiency testing.
However, General Torre also reminded police officers they should only be using their weapons as a last resort and only when they are very, very sure they need it in operations.
We have to be very, very sure of what we are doing. Buhay ang nakataya rito eh. Pag ginamit mo at hindi mo alam paano gamitin, paano ang intended target, hindi mo tamaan at ang tatamaan ay ang innocenteng tao. So, ayaw natin nun.
And now here are the stories making headlines worldwide. In Israel, Filipinos have been urged to stay indoors amid fears of retaliation from Iran. That's after Israel launched a series of preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear and military sites, including its main enrichment facility in Natanz. Explosions rocked Tehran as Israel kicked off Operation Rising Lion, targeting Iran's missile program and top nuclear officials. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strikes were in response to Iran's steps to weaponize uranium and warned it will go on for days. The attack comes as the U.S. negotiates a deal with Iran to limit its ability to produce nuclear weapons, a goal Israel has long sought through military force. Iran has avowed severe retaliation, blaming both Israel and the U.S. though Washington denied involvement.
Moving on to the United States, where an appeals court has temporarily blocked a federal judge's order directing President Donald Trump to return control of the National Guard troops to the state of California. This is after their deployment during immigration raid protests in Los Angeles. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals issued the temporary block just hours before the order was supposed to take effect and will hold a hearing on Tuesday. Earlier, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer called the deployment illegal, citing 10th Amendment violations and overreach of Trump's authority. For his part, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who sought the order, praised and called the ruling a quote-unquote test of democracy.
And in India, only one passenger survived the crash of Air India flight AI-171, which claimed at least 241 lives. The survivor is a 40-year-old British national of Indian origin who jumped from his seat to an emergency exit. The flight bound for London went down shortly after takeoff from Ahmedabad, crashing into a hospital complex and student hostel. This marks India's deadliest aviation disaster since 1996 and its first plane crash since 2020. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the disaster quote-unquote heartbreaking beyond words. Meantime, President Bongbong Marcos extended condolences to India, saying Filipinos stand in solidarity and grieve with the victims' families.
Let's hit the pause button on disasters for a bit. When we return, we will be talking about triumphs, including that of Filipino mountaineer Geno Panganibans, who just conquered Mount Everest. Keep it here on One News.
You're back on the big story. 3 Filipinos just conquered the world's highest peak. Rick Rabe, Geno Panganiban, and Miguel Mapalad have now joined the ranks of Filipino mountaineers who have reached the summit of Mount Everest. Rabe, a Cotabato native, made the ascent first, followed by Panganiban and Mapalad, who are both part of the Philippine 14 Peaks expedition team. This feat comes, 19 years after the first Filipino climbers reached the Everest's peak. And to share his experience firsthand, joining us now live is Geno Panganiban. Good evening, welcome to the big story. Lahat kami humahanga sa'yo.
Good evening and thanks for having me here. Thank you so much.
You shared with us that those shoes you're wearing have actually stepped on up to what part of the mountain?
From start to Everest Base Camp and back.
Wow. They survived. But you survived.
Yes.
And what we're seeing as a parang tan on your face are actually frostbite.
Ito po yung sunburn and windburn, and ito na yung mark ng oxygen mask ko. Ito yung kita niyo yung lines. Ngayon medyo nagre-recover na siya.
May advice mo ba for an avid climber to even attempt to do what you did? How hard was it really?
If you're an avid climber, I think that's the next big thing for you. So you would want to climb Mount Everest, no? I mean, meron sa kanila nag-start from Everest Base Camp, then nagtatry ng ibang high altitude peaks. Of course, papangarapin niya din umakyat ng Mount Everest.
Bata ka pa, nagawa mo na. So what's there to achieve now?
For next namin, I guess we should try the second highest naman.
At least you already conquered Mount Everest.
Yes.
Lahat ng iba kaya mo na, di ba? But Jenna, tell us...
Lahat papaghandaan pa rin.
Papaghandaan pa rin. Tell us what you saw at the summit of Mount Everest. Because only a few people can say that they saw, the curvature of the Earth.
Yes, yes. So, for me, when I summited Mount Everest, it's a feeling that I couldn't compare to any other feeling or any other mountain. Kasi Mount Everest, yan na talaga ang pinakamataas na bundok. Wala na talagang mas tataas sa kanya. So, habang packet ako, nakita ko na yung it's the best sunrise ever.
Really?
Nasa taas na ako ng clouds, nasa taas na ako ng mga bundok. Diba, nakita ko na bilog ang mundo. Yung curvature ng mundo, napakaganda talaga.
Sobrang lapit mo na sa sun.
Yes.
Paano? Paki-describe.
Oo nga, paano?
So,
Curvature ng mundo.
nakita mo yung ganun niya.
Parang
Yung talagang ganun.
Yes, the arc. So, ano
You
pa
were
kain?
closer to the sun than you were to, di ba, ng sea level.
Kaya nga,
Yes.
kaya nakasan, kaya umitim ka, no?
Sobrang umitim. Grabe.
What did you discover about yourself while, when you achieved this?
Na-discover ko na I'm more that I am capable of. That I think that I'm capable of. Na kaya ko pala gawin yung mga ganong klaseng bagay. No? Sa una kasi magsisimula yan, susugal muna ako eh. Pangarapin ko, susugal ako. Pero nung narating ko, kaya ko pala. Diba? Yun.
Backtrack tayo ng konti,
Yes,
Jeno.
ma'am.
How did you get into climbing to begin with? And how long have you been doing it? Kasi nasa murang edad, natapos mo na yung Mount Everest, which is like,
So, backtrack, I started hiking here sa Philippines when I was in third year college.
Okay.
That was 2016. And I was just
It was like 10 years ago, 9 years ago.
Yes. Yung nakita ko kasi yung classmates ko, ang ganda ng mga picture nila sa Facebook and Instagram. Then that got me
Pang
envious.
Instagram pala.
Yung pala yung simula.
Kasi ano lang ako nun eh, mahilig lang ako mag-computer. So,
Indoor activities.
indoor activities. Pero naging envious ako ng onte, pero mas naging curious ako na ano ba kaya yung outdoors?
Oh, I think this is a message to the youth na mga
Kaya,
nakatutok
yun.
lang sa telepono at
So,
computer.
na-curious ako, ano ba yung pamumundok, ano ba yung hiking, ano ba yung outdoors na sinasabi nila. Then, ayun, doon ako nag-start. That was at Mount Talamita, Nasugbu, Batangas. Yes. So,
Okay, medyo doable yun, no? For a casual hiker.
Kahit sino.
Kahit sino
Kahit tayo kaya yun.
Oo, kaya
kaya,
natin.
kaya. Pero nung mga time na yun, wala kasi nag-guide sa akin eh. So, it was hellish experience for me. Kasi, naka-sleeveless ako. Tapos,
Hindi ka prepared.
Hindi
Wala kang
talaga
gear.
Wala akong gear. Hindi ko naman naka-good morning towel pa ako. So, hindi ko talaga alam. So, pero, after nun, kahit nag-struggle ako, nakapag-summit ako, and I said to myself na, wow, ito pala yung feeling na
Adik ka.
sobrang na. Actually, it took me 5 more hikes pa siguro bago ako ma-addict.
Buti hindi ka
Try lang ng
na-dissuade,
try.
ano?
Yes.
Itong kasama mo, no? So, tatlo kayo.
Yes.
You're with Rick and Miguel.
Yes.
Barkada ba talaga kayo? Climbing barkada mo ba talaga yon? Or are these professional climbers that, you went with?
Si Rick, nasa ibang expedition team kasi siya, pero he often visits us sa aming camp ni Miguel. And I know na umakyat na siya sa Swiss Alps, so alam kong kakayanin niya yung Mount Everest. No? And nakakabilib kasi Rick's, parang 51 years old na ata. So nakakabilib si Kuya Rick. And si Miguel naman, isa sa mga pioneer na sa Philippine mountaineering. And naging mentor ko na din siya.
When you pushed for the summit, Jeno, at one point, nagkaroon ka ba ng doubt? Na parang,
Yeah, did you ever want to give
na
up?
mag-quit ka na, ang hirap pala nito,
U-turn,
hindi ko
U-turn
kaya.
na.
Yes,
Meron
good question. Maraming signs na pwede na akong bumalik eh. Pero hindi
Like
kami
what?
pwede
What signs were those? Yung
naging mas extreme yung weather. Nakita na kami ng dead bodies, yung gutom, yung sipon, yung
Gutom?
Yes, yung uhaw.
Gutom ang concern eh.
Kasi wala kaming...
Uhaw din?
Uhaw din kasi for more than 1 month, snow water lang iniinom namin and nakakasawa inumin. Hindi siya as pleasant as mineral water.
Hindi
Hindi siya lasang malinis.
Hindi siya lasang malinis. So, naging limited na yung sources namin doon.
Okay, but what kept you going?
Pinaghandaan namin to eh. Sobrang driven kami ng passion namin eh. Yung goal namin to bring Philippines back to the picture na kasi yung sinabi nyo nga po kanina, almost 2 decades na walang Filipino na nakakakit ng Mount Everest. And dapat natin patunayan na Filipinos can scale these mountains na kahit tayo, from the tropics, we live in sea level, kaya natin umakyat sa high altitude.
I think Miss Cess is gonna like this because when Geno climbed up, actually hindi niya iniwan yung Philippine flag, tama ba? Kasi ayaw mo na daw mag-contribute sa waste sa basura doon sa top of the mountain.
Yes.
Because he's also an advocate for sustainability.
Yes. Kasi yung...
So hindi mo siya iniwan doon?
I love nature.
You will be a person who wants to be sustainable, to lead a sustainable life.
Yes, kasi sabi nila doon, almost 2 tons na yung garbage sa taas.
2 tons?
Yes. Natapunan na lang ng snow, then nag-harden na. So, yung majority ng waste, hindi na maibaba. So, dapat, hindi lang basta climber. We should be responsible climbers as well.
Yeah. Protect the environment of the mountains you are climbing.
Yes,
May nakita ka na bukod doon, ano pang impact ng, alam mo yon, hindi conscious na mga tao?
Human waste.
Okay.
Yes. So, maraming umaabuso lang.
Hindi nag-ano. Ano ba yung protocol doon sa human waste?
Sa base camp,
dala-dala mo ba sa backpack?
Or who?
sa base camp, meron po kaming toilet tent and may drum kami. So, nabababa siya sa baba. Sa taas naman, meron kaming poo bag.
Okay.
I knew it. So, you put it in your backpack nga.
Sa mga ano, no?
Oh my gosh.
What a thought, right?
Not
Pero
for the faint
dapat
of heart.
talaga ganun eh.
Yes.
Pero last question for me,
Yes,
Geno.
ma'am.
Tinanong ko na to sa kanya kanina eh. Doon sa mga hindi pa kaya mag-Everest dahil hindi siya joke, dito sa Philippines, ano yung favorite peak mo na na-climb mo na?
Ang favorite peak ko ay Mount Giting-Giting sa Sibuyan, Romblon. No? Ano siya eh, complete package siya eh. May forest, may rock, di ba? Tapos, meron siyang sawtooth na face. And ang ganda ng mga beaches.
Kaya namin yon.
Basta papaghandaan at dahan-dahan lang.
Yeah.
Nakakatakot yun.
Spoil ako eh.
Ako rin, pero
Giting
Yes.
sa
Sibuyan, Romblon.
Yes. Ang ganda.
Kasi doon galing ang mga marmol, di ba?
Yes.
Oo. Okay. I wish we had more time to
Kaya nga po. But thank you
get
so
your
much.
stories all the more. But congratulations!
Thank you.
Wait, eto na.
Ah,
Kasi
hindi pa?
gusto niya mag-climb ng isa pang mountain eh, di ba? Ano yung next? Kasi I'm sure maraming curious. Tapos mo na yung Everest, meron pa ba? Meron.
Yung next namin, ang goal kasi ng team namin is to climb all the 8,000 meter peaks sa buong mundo. And merong 14 na 8,000 meter peaks.
That's what you call yourselves.
Yes,
14,
and
ano ba yun?
14 peaks expedition team. And we already climbed 2, Mount Manaslu and Mount Everest. Next naman namin yung K2, the Savage Mountain. That's the second highest peak in the world.
And when are you doing this?
June next year.
June next year.
Yes.
Okay, hindi ba tapos itong usapan na to?
Invite na lang natin siya ulit in June next
And
year.
the sponsors, you know, you need people who believe in what you're doing, companies. So,
Yes.
shout out sa inyo.
Thank you so much sa mga tumulong at nagdasal para sa amin.
Maraming salamat sa iyo. That was Filipino mountaineer Geno Panganiban.
Right, well, all eyes are on Alas Filipinas as they chase a spot in the finals of the ABC Nations Cup. Catch their knockout semifinal clash against Chinese Taipei tonight at 9 p.m. via One Sports Plus and Signal Channel 261. You can also stream it live and free on the Pilipinas Live app. The nation's watching, so make it count, Alas. And And overseas, the Hong Kong Festival 2025 has kicked off in celebration of Philippine independence. Some award-winning movies, such as Gumburza and The Kingdom, will be shown at the Emperor Cinema Ice Square for the Makabayan Film Festival on June 13 and 14. Joining the festivities are actors Sid Lucero, Cedric Juan, and Sue Ramirez. There will also be a concert called Saludo on Chatter Road Central on June 15, which will feature Senator Raffy Tulfo, Vic Soto, and the rest of the Dabarkads, plus some stars of Singaling. Okay, and so that's it for the big story this week. Thank you so much for watching.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We'll be back on Monday, 7:30 p.m. We'll see you then. Have a good night and enjoy your weekend.